My name is Dan Prinzen, Executive Director of the Wasmus Center for Human Rights. Thank you for joining us for the dedication of the Beal Legacy Garden. Today, surrounded by the images and words portrayed throughout the memorial, we are challenged to consider the impact when segments in society are viewed as lesser than or not deserving of the rights and protections extended to others. Today, we are reminded that the Holocaust was not 6 million. It was 1 plus 1 plus 1. Anne Frank was one, her sister Margot another, and their mother Edith another. Each a life taken, and as Anne questioned, just because they were Jews? In the memorial, Anne provides a face and a voice to the Holocaust. We share the story of her short life. Today, we are honored to bring another story, another voice into the memorial. A story born in Berlin, Germany, that has and will continue to change countless lives in Boise, Idaho. Today, gathering with her family and friends, we celebrate Rose. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce Mayor Dave Beater. Elected mayor of Boise in 2003 and re-elected in 2007 and 2011, his sense of history, personal story, and deep roots in the community continue to shape the city that we proudly call home. Mayor Beater.
Well, thank you, everyone. What a great crowd this is. And we want to thank Rose for holding off the rain for us. We know she had a hand in that. It is an honor for me to share a few words with you today and just to be here. Because Rose, in just about 10 years, made such a dramatic impact on our city and our community. You know, it's been said that the measure of a human life isn't in possessions or in things that we build, but rather it's about the hearts that we change. And by that measure, Rose was truly a great person indeed. I heard her speak many times, as many of us have, about being a Holocaust survivor. Her story is one of courage and the ability to take a painful memory and use it as an instrument of change. Through speeches, visits to local schools, and in personal conversations, Rose never missed an opportunity to tell her story. I can't imagine how hard it was to tell stories about witnessing book burnings, experiencing the terror of the Gestapo, and being driven from her home as a little girl in the middle of the night. Rose, her mother, and her brothers were among the few to escape the concentration camps and come to America. She loved this country and had a very simple yet profound message that we must never take our liberty and good fortune for granted. As to all of us, it saddened me greatly when I learned of her passing earlier this month, but I am so glad we're dedicating this garden in her memory. I can't think of a better way to preserve her legacy, and it will be a cherished landmark and tribute to all those who have fought for the dignity and well-being of oppressed people around the world. Thank you all again so much for being here. God bless you all, and God bless Rose. Thank you very much.
Just a couple of weeks ago, when construction mess was scattered throughout the memorial, I had the distinct pleasure of guiding Leslie Drake and Sidney Fiddler through the design of the Beal Legacy Garden and the plans for the addition of the outdoor classroom. While I live and breathe the impact of the memorial and the work of the center on a daily basis, I could not help but be carried away by their love and dedication to the memorial. Leslie's commitment with Lisa Ullman and Nancy Taylor to the original vision of building a memorial. Sidney's 2-year shepherding of a quote committee to select the words surrounding us. All this born out of a love for their community and a commitment to social justice. In gratitude to an impressive list of center board members and my predecessors, Mary Peterman, Les Bach, and Amy Hersfeld, we stand here today. In recognition of the support from the Mayor's Office, City Council, and an extraordinary partnership with Boise Parks and Recreation, we stand here today. In constant awe of the devotion of time and talent shared by the Volunteer Memorial Docent Committee to share the memorial and its powerful message with thousands of K-12 and university students each year, we stand here today. And to all of you, and those throughout the state and nation who dug into their pockets to fund the building of a visual statement of our shared values and the addition of the Rose Beal Legacy Garden, we stand here today. We stand where Rose Beal began sharing her story, a story that even her children knew little of, a story that she had carried with her for decades, then linked to one of her favorite quotes in the memorial, "Make injustice visible." She talked of the injustice of the Nuremberg laws. She talked of the horrors of Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass. And she talked of deportation and deprivation. And she challenged us by saying, never again is obsolete, for never again is now. What will we do in our community now to confront injustice? What will we do now to stand up to discrimination? What will we do now to protect the human rights of those most vulnerable? For me, that is Rose's legacy, a personal call to action. What will I do now? The garden links Rose's story to a poignant reminder by Eleanor Roosevelt, etched on the back of the portal behind us. It isn't enough to talk about peace. One must believe in it. And it isn't enough to believe in it. One must work at it. What will I do now? Next spring, you will discover 18 peace roses blooming within the fence. 18, translated into Hebrew as Hai, the symbol of life. Centered within those roses, next June we will dedicate the planting of the Anne Frank chestnut tree sapling, one of 11 awarded in the United States by the Anne Frank Center, Amsterdam, a sapling taken from the stately chestnut tree that Anne referenced in her diary. Standing behind me, the statue of Anne Frank will gaze out the window directly to the chestnut tree, just as she described in her diary. It is a piece of Anne's legacy. And in the garden, we read Bill Wasmuth's challenge. Saying no to discrimination is saying yes to human rights. Bill Wasmuth, Idaho's human rights advocate, who faced the Aryan nation and stood up against hate and violence. What will I do now? Rose refused to allow us to dwell in the horrors of her history. How often she told us, I've lived a good life. Once again in Hebrew, Hi, life. What Anne Frank did in word, what Bill Wasmuth did in action, what Rose asked of all of us, what will we do now? What mark will we make as our legacy? Joining us this morning, Oliver Thompson, Beverly Carruthers, and Rose's son, Danny Beal.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. not the only one. We hope someday you'll join us, and all the worlds will live as one.
The mission of the center is to promote respect for human dignity and diversity through education, and to foster individual responsibility to work for justice and peace. That torch, carried by many in our community, is lifted higher and shines brighter through the wit and wisdom of Rabbi Dan Fink. From Congregation Ahaveth Beth Israel and a member of the Center's Advisory Board, Rabbi Dan.
The story is told that when the holy Rabbi Yisrael, the Baal Shem Tov, foresaw trials for his people, he would go out to a special place in the forest. There he would light a fire and sing a prayer, and that would be enough. When his student, the Maggid of Mezrich, sought God's grace in hard times, he would go to the same spot in the forest. He would bow his head and he would plead, Ribono Shel Olam, Master of the universe, I don't know how to light the fire, but I can come to this place and sing the prayer, and that will have to be enough. And it was enough. A generation passed. Now Reb Moshe Leib of Sasov would plead for his followers in difficult times, and he would chant in a broken voice, Master of the universe, I don't know how to light the fire, and I can't find the place in the forest. I only know the prayer, and that will have to be enough. And it was enough. Another generation came and went, and now Rav Yisroel of Rizhin would seek mercy for his people, and he would sit alone at home with his head in his hands. Weeping, he would cry out, Source of all, I don't know how to light the fire. I can't find the place in the forest. I don't know the words or even the melody of the prayer. All I can do is tell the story of how once there was a forest and a fire and a song, and that will have to be enough. Reflecting on Rose Beal's long and remarkable life, we are called back to this classic Hasidic tale, for Rose's experience echoes its message: profound loss, inextricably bound with sacred and redemptive remembrance. Rose saw the fire of light and learning that marked her blessed childhood in Berlin and Frankfurt, consumed by the conflagration of hate that destroyed European Jewry. She bore witness to humanity's darkest hours as the shadow of death transformed the forest playgrounds of her youth into killing grounds and mass graves. And she heard the prayers of her peers, her people, classmates, family, and friends stifled into silence by the Nazis' brutality. But Rose never forgot the stories of the fire and the forest, the songs and the prayers of that lost world, the beautiful stories of what was, and the tragic stories of how it was destroyed. And so, when relatively late in her life the hour arrived for Rose to tell those stories, she told them, eloquently, elegiacally, movingly, and above all, courageously. She told them to us and to her children and to so many of the students and the future leaders of this city and this community. And that is why we are here today to dedicate this garden in her memory. Because she told those stories with unquenchable hope that we might learn from them and thereby bring healing to this world that so desperately needs it. We are here because Rose shared her stories with all of us. Because like the Baal Shem Tov himself, Rose Beal came to see and to live in a way that reminds us that in remembrance begins redemption. In remembrance begins redemption, but it's not an automatic relationship. Remembrance brings redemption only when we live the lessons it challenges us to take to heart. And that was Rose's true greatness, because she embodied the teachings of love and compassion and justice and courage, not just in the words of her stories, but far more importantly in the example she set for her loved ones in her daily life. So many memories in this place. So many memories of Rose. So many blessings. You've heard them in Dan Prinzing's tribute and Mayor Beater's proclamation. You hear them in the beautiful spirit that moves her son Danny's music, shared with Oliver Thompson and Beverly Crothers. As the words "never again" have become platitudes, with genocide tragically occurring again and again and again. Rose reminds us, as she did to her dying day and still does, that never again is now. Because Rose never stopped believing that love and kindness can triumph in the wider world, as love and kindness triumphed in her own life. But they will only triumph if we are all constantly and eternally vigilant and brave enough to stand up to bigotry in all of its manifestations, in far-off nations and right here in our own homes and our own hearts. Zecher Tzadik Levracha. May Rose's memory be for an abiding blessing. And may the beauty of this place that we dedicate today, this garden of flowers, of chai, of life, always call us, as Rose so graciously and insistently called us, to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly together. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we will remember Rose. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we will remember her. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, we will remember her. In the rustling of leaves and the beauty of autumn, we will remember her. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we will remember her. When we are weary and in need of strength, we will remember her. When we are lost and sick at heart, we will remember her. When we have joys we yearn to share, we will remember her. So long as we live in pursuit of justice and goodness and mercy, she too shall live, for she is now a part of us as we remember her. To share a traditional Jewish reading, I would like to call upon Rose's good friend, Don Curtis.
I've been told I can make a couple personal remarks about Rose, but after the rabbi's comments, I'm going to first do the traditional reading by Rabbi Alvin Fine, entitled "Birth is a Beginning." Birth is a beginning, and death a destination, and life is a journey from childhood to maturity, and youth to age, from innocence to awareness, and ignorance to knowing, and from foolishness to discretion, and then perhaps to wisdom. From weakness to strength, or strength to weakness, and often back again. From health to sickness, and back, we pray, to health again. From offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but having made the journey stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage, birth is a beginning and death a destination, and life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage to life everlasting. Amen. It is a dangerous thing to tell me that I can make a few remarks. How long do you have? How long do I need to tell you about the meaning of Rose Beal in all of our lives? Each one of us has an own personal story that we can share about how we were special to her. It wasn't lost on me that when Rose passed away a few weeks ago, no one said Rose Beal died. No one said Rose Beal passed away. They said, we have lost our Rose. Because inside of each one of us, we sensed a deep, deep sense of personal loss, of her many gifts for all of us. Rose was unassuming. First time we met her was in that building across the way over there. She was giving a presentation to our docents, and we were all speechless at the end of the story that many of you have heard a number of times. And I think I was on one side and my wife Susan was on the other side, and we turned to her and we said, Rose, you need to be a docent. And she, oh no, I could never do that, what have you. And then we changed our line and we said, Rose, we need you to be a docent. And Rose never said no when you said you needed her. Rose liked men. She liked men to know she liked them. And she liked men liking her. I'll come back to that later. But that is amazing considering the wrongs and the pain that had been inflicted primarily by men upon Rose and on her family and upon those people in her faith in Germany. Rose had courage like no one else I've ever met. This was a young girl as a teenager who put on her overcoat with a yellow star on it in 1939 Germany, a few months before Hitler marched on Poland, carrying their passports to get that little stamp that would allow them on the last ship that left France for the United States to get out of Europe and save their lives. That's courage. She had a keen, sharp mind. We all know that. It was always thinking and discerning and listening. And then, after she thought, speaking, but doing so in an accepting way. She was self-sacrificing. She put herself aside. The bright sunlight, she couldn't handle it with her eyes, but she was here. The heat she couldn't handle, but she was here. The cold she couldn't handle, but she was here. The high altitude she couldn't handle, but within a few months of her death, she was in Sun Valley speaking, in Wood River, speaking at that high altitude because she had a sense that they needed her. We know of her abject honesty to speak her truth. You asked Rose a question, you got an honest answer. The young boy at the end of a speech who said, "Have you ever forgiven them?" Speaking of the Nazis, "Have you ever forgiven them?" And she said, "No." She thought, then she said, "No, I will never forgive them. They've taken every member of my family except my brothers and my mother and me. I will not forgive them. I'll leave that to somebody else to do, but not from me." I think she added, "They're not deserving of my forgiveness." She had a sense of humor, and she showed us how to die with dignity. And I have a combination of both of those. Gets back to the liking men and men liking her. My wife and I had a chance to visit Rose during the last week of her death or so, and Rose and I would joke around, and I told her, I said, "Rose," I said, "you know, we've admitted that we've had a good relationship and that maybe I should have been born about 20 years earlier and then things could have been different." And she said yes, and then I said, "You know, I have some bad news and some good news for you, Rose." She says, "Okay, give me the bad news." And I said, "Well, you know that you're not my first Jewish girlfriend." And she smiled and she says, "Well, so what's the good news?" And I said, "The good news is you're going to be my last Jewish girlfriend." And she said, "What good will there be in that for me? I'm not going to be here." Sense of humor, death with dignity. I had the honor, she also had the ability to gather us, to capture us with her story, and to help us to listen and then be changed forever. I had the privilege of being at her last three presentations. One at Boise High School last December, where 1,100 students, I'm glad the fire marshals were not there, because I don't know what the capacity is, but the aisles were lined, the kids were sitting in the aisles, maybe 11 or 1,200 young people there. You could have heard a pin drop for over an hour. And then at community school, at the invitation of a number of people, including the Feltman family who's here today, April went up and spoke to the community in the Sun Valley Ketchum area the evening before her last speech. And her last speech was at Wood River Junior and Senior High School, a combination, Wood River Junior High School, and then the senior high school came in, and 800 or 900 kids, early in the morning, kind of an hour before lunch. Can you imagine trying to get 800 students' attention? Once again, you could have heard a pin drop in that noisy, lousy acoustics auditorium as Rose Beal talked to them and told her story. I realized the impact when I stood back. I got to introduce her, and I stood back at the corner and looked around. And the coach in the glass booth over here had been working on his lessons plans, had set that aside and had walked out. And on the other entrance, there were some teaching assistants who'd come in. 2 janitors and a couple groundskeepers had come in to stand there. And some other people, members of the community, come and stand there just to hear this woman talk about her journey and the importance of justice as she saw it. I had a closing here, but I'm not going to use that closing. Leslie Feltman and her wonderful family brought to me, not to me, to give to the Beal family a notebook that they put together over the last few weeks at Wood River Junior High School about Rose Beal, and this is subsequent to her death. And they put together notes and sticky notes and comments, etc. And I'm just going to read the 2 here who are by the advertisement of her speech there. Out of the mouths of children, or out of the mouths of babes, I think is the real wisdom. One said, "Rose, you are so brave, and I wish that you were still here with us." And the last one said, "I was so thrilled to hear your tragic story. You are an amazing person, and I can't wait to see you later. Haley." My sentiments exactly, Rose. I cannot wait to see you later.
In Jewish tradition, the Kaddish is the prayer we utter in times of mourning. The prayer is in Aramaic, which was the lingua franca of the time 2,000 years ago when it was written. Interestingly, for its very close association with grief and mourning, fittingly, the prayer doesn't mention death at all. The words are words of praise that bring us back to life, back to the living, back to caring for and supporting one another. And so if you know the words, please join with me. If you don't know the words, be there in spirit with that praise, zest, passion for life that Rose brought to everything she did. So I'm going to ask the community to please rise, if you are able. And the words are on the back of your program if you read Aramaic. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah. V'alma divra chiratei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chaye echon v'yom echon uv'chaye dechol beit Yisrael. Ba'agala uv'izman kariv v'yamru. Amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevarach le'olam lo me'almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudsha barichu. Le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbachata v'nechamata. Da'amiran b'alma v'yimru. Amen. Yehei shalom araba min shemaya. V'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav. Hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru. Amen. May the source of peace, let peace descend on us, on all of our world that is in such deep need of peace. May Rose's memory be a source of peace and an abiding blessing. And let us all say, Amen. Please be seated.
And thank you all for joining us today. Thank you to all those that are listed on the back of today's program for organizing, assisting, and sharing to make this dedication possible. To Rose's family, thank you for allowing us to publicly share your loss and your love. We have refreshments waiting for you under the canopy behind the log cabin. Danny and Sheila and Gina have invited friends and family to gather in the social hall at the synagogue at 2. But in closing, I have to share one last story with Rose. In the final weeks, when I was visiting in her apartment, sharing the design of the garden, sharing each word that was going to be inscribed on the rock, on the bench. When we finished, and in that banter that Rose loved to have, she said, Dan, if I get to do it again, I'm going to marry someone just like you. I said, Rose, why not me? And she said, Dan, you've got Carol. What I actually knew, I was too old for Rose. She will forever live in our hearts. She will forever live in the memorial. We dedicate the Rose Beal Legacy Garden in her honor, and her legacy is our charge to go forward. And our closing song, how fittingly appropriate, because Rose ended every presentation she made acknowledging her love of the United States. All that she had been given, every opportunity that she had had, and a woman that came in and conquered with her will and with her heart. Oliver, Danny, and Beverly, please close us out.